Miriam lived in the big city of Lagos with her husband Efe and their two young children, Eloho and Ejiro. Efe was a well-respected businessman, and Miriam was a working mother who barely had time for her family. Balancing the home front was very difficult for her as her job was very demanding. While she was away for work, her children's needs were becoming neglected, and her husband Efe, who was barely around due to the fact that he often travels for business. So Miriam thought that it was time to get a help to assist her with house chores, to make her work easier, and to also care for the children whenever she was off to work. Everything started causing a distance between Efe and Miriam because they were no longer having time for themselves and they seemed to be drifting apart. After much deliberation, they decided to hire a maid, and that was when Tina came into their lives. Tina was a young woman from the village whom they brought to Lagos to help them. She was so eager to make a living and support her aging parents. When she arrived at Miriam's home, she was filled with so much gratitude and determination to do her job well. Tina worked diligently, cleaning the house, cooking delicious meals, and caring for Eloho and Ejiro as if they were her own siblings. Miriam was very impressed by Tina's dedication and agreed to trust her while leaving almost everything to her care. Miriam felt so lucky to have Tina in her life because she made everything so easy for her, and she began to have a little time on her own hands, and the relationship between Miriam and her husband was restored, although it was not very perfect yet. But as weeks turned into months, Tina began to notice the gaps in Efe and Miriam's relationship. As they both have busy schedules, Efe's frequent absence weighed heavily on Miriam the most. Tina saw an opportunity, a dangerous one, to exploit the growing distance between the couple. So it started with small gestures. Anytime Efe is around, Tina would linger a moment too long when serving Efe his meals. Then it graduated further. She started complimenting him. Efe, worn out from his business obligations and the emotional distance from Miriam, found himself entertained by Tina's attention. What began as harmless slowly turned into secret conversations and stolen glances. One fateful evening, when Miriam had taken the children to visit her mother, Tina made her move. Efe, already softened by the warmth of Tina's flattery, succumbed to temptation. Their affair began in secret, and right under Miriam's nose, the girl she brought started sneaking in to snatch her husband from her and destroy everything she had built over the years. Tina had a very strong grip on Efe. She began to whisper poison into his ears about Miriam. She painted Miriam as neglectful and ungrateful, twisting the truth to suit her wicked agenda. Meanwhile, Miriam never knew about the affair between her husband and Tina. Whenever Efe goes on his usual business trips, Tina would behave so well, but Tina was crawling so quickly into their family to destroy everything. Efe was now blinded by Tina's manipulation. He began to grow cold towards Miriam. Their once happy home turned into a battleground of misunderstandings and accusations. Despite Miriam's attempts to mend their relationship, Efe's heart was already hardened. One day, during their usual argument, Efe demanded that Miriam should leave the house. In that moment, she knew that it was game over for her. Heartbroken and humiliated, Miriam packed her belongings and left with nothing but her dignity and a strong desire to protect her children at all costs. However, Tina's ambition knew no bounds. Now, she became the mistress of the house. she turned her attention to Miriam's children. Under the guise of care, she used dark spiritual practices to manipulate Elohor and Ejiro, turning them against their mother. Miriam's worst fears finally came true when she realized her children no longer wanted to see her. But in her despair, Miriam turned to prayer. Every day, she would cry out to God to deliver her from the anguish and restore her family. Her days were spent fasting, praying. Slowly, she began to gather strength, believing in the power of divine intervention. Meanwhile, Tina's newfound life of luxury did not last for long. Everything began to crumble. First, her spiritual hold on Elohor and Ejiro began to break off. So, Tina started experiencing terrifying nightmares and unexplained misfortunes. The weight of her actions began to haunt her, but she refused to give up on her wicked mission. Unknown to Tina, Miriam was having so many sleepless nights praying for her family and taking charge behind the scene. Suddenly, Efe started changing towards her. She was surprised that Efe, that she had at her fingertips, was now withdrawing from her. So she decided to double on her mission, but the more she tried, the more she failed. One night, after Miriam had finished praying, she slept off and she had a dream where her children were trapped in a cage. In the dream, she saw herself breaking the cage's lock and setting her children free. When she awoke, she knew that the salvation of her family was close. But she kept praying and never gave up. So gradually, her prayers started unraveling Tina's spiritual stronghold. On one fateful day, Elohor and Ejiro woke up in the morning and they started longing for their mother. Then Efe, who was already growing cold towards Tina, never wanted to see her around him. Her hands became like thorns on his body, and he was so irritated by her presence as well. Now, the end of Tina's manipulations was coming to an end. But as Tina felt that she was losing, she now started manifesting physically. Efe became so scared for his life and that of his children that he had to run to his wife Miriam. Efe started asking for her forgiveness. He was crying like a baby and was pleading with her to come back to the house. That day, Miriam knew that her prayers had been answered, and she forgave him and went back home. As soon as the family reunited, Tina started facing her punishment for all her sins. All the spiritual practices she had used turned against her, leading to her physical and mental deterioration. She was left to wander the streets in torment. Now, after Tina was gone, although Miriam had forgiven Efe, but the scars of betrayal still lingered. But Efe tried to regain her trust once again. He became intentional about their family's happiness over everything. Him and Miriam made sure that even in the midst of their busy schedules, they created time for the kids and for themselves too, to avoid having gap in their relationship. So this story is for everyone who is seeking to carry a maid. We should know that the society we live in already is bad enough. So let's be more careful to avoid using our hands to destroy everything that we have built. We should also be more prayerful before making the decision of carrying a maid into our homes. I hope you enjoyed this story today. Do well to like, share and comment and subscribe to my channel. I'll see you in the next video. Bye.